One would expect that an ideal scout would be a locust, a wasp, a stinger, or perhaps even a phoenix hawk lamb. But as it turns out, each of the great houses has its own mores regarding how it does scouting. Then there are those who claim that there's definitely a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. I would say it's more like a regular versus an irregular way. The irregular way would be to use infantry or perhaps even warrior helicopters that have great line of sight. And why is it the irregular way? Because it makes perfect sense, you dummy. Anything that makes perfect sense is something that is not going to be done. The regular way, on the other hand, is to take your precious Lost Tech Star League mechs and risk them all just to gain some minor intel. And how exactly do you spot a scout anyway? Well, Kurita has the Jenner. Davian, being tactical masters, uses a cheaper and lighter mech like the Locust. And Capellans, because they like ECM and things like that, use Ravens to be sneaky. I mean, you gotta hand it to Maximilian Liao. I mean, the Raven is a newly developed mech in the 3028 age. So it's not like you're trashing your Lost Tech, Aerotech Lamb in order to find out what kind of beer the opponent's commander likes. And Merrick? Well, they might just pay and mark up, or do something sensible and cost-effective like use vehicles. And all this is cute and neat and stuff. But then there's the real way, the Steiner way. And the Steiner way, of course, is just the regular way, except with assault mechs. Overview. The sight of battle mechs lumbering across the terrain is a familiar one among the worlds of the inner sphere. Nevertheless, the sight of an AS-7D Atlas still manages to make even experienced mech warriors break out in a sweat and brings the bitter taste of bile to their mouths. The Atlas was designed as a last-ditch attempt to ensure the superiority of the Star League's regular army over the growing armies of the House Lords. It was an understandable reaction to the Cameron edicts passed from 2751 to 2761 by the High Council, which permitted the Five Lords to double the size of their personal armies. A famous general once said, "If fear is not your friend, then it shall be your enemy." General Kerensky himself set down the specifications for the Atlas. He said it should be a mech as powerful as possible, as impenetrable as possible, and as ugly and foreboding as conceivable, so that fear itself will be our ally. Ugly and foreboding are two apt descriptions for the Atlas. Though some mechs might be taller and heavier, none have the Atlas's aura. Considerable effort went into making the Atlas's weapons as visible as possible, giving an opposing mech warrior plenty of opportunities to see enough to see that he is outgunned and decide he is not being paid enough to die. Designers spent an entire year fashioning the head and cockpit to create a perfect merging of function and gruesomeness. The result was a complete success, and so mech warriors nicknamed the Atlas Death's Head, or in some circles, Heavy Scout. The Atlas was the first mech to mount such a large and devastating autocannon. Even though it only carries 10 rounds for its AC-20, the mere threat of such a large autocannon is often enough to send some mechs scurrying. Quite honestly, I would scurry too. The weapon's only problem is that it lacks a cooling jacket and can overheat easily. The Atlas's long-range missile delivery system is a unique design.
Upon discovering that the 20 launching tubes wouldn't fit into the mech's torso, the designers decided to install 5 tubes with a feed system that can shoot 4 salvos within 10 seconds. The feed system is fairly reliable, and techs need only worry about shielding the ammo from heat emitted from the nearby reactor. Reloading is quick, as each missile tube system has its own ammunition clip. Completely loaded, the missile system can shoot 12 salvos of 20 missiles. The large aperture between the 2 missile systems may look like another weapon, but it's the Omni coupling. That's where you can put power and coolant into the mech for debug and repair. In other words, that's where you jack in your cooling trucks so you can just lay down suppressing fire with no concern for heat.
This leads to an interesting conundrum and discrepancy between the original art and the original miniatures. So according to original lore, that is actually the SRM, not the LRM. And that, the hip thing, is actually the 5-tube LRM. Clearly, the miniatures designers had different ideas, because the hip is now the SRM, and the LRM is split between the torsos. This is an example of the elusive obvious, something that is obviously right in your face, but you miss it and don't notice it for decades, although there's something nagging you in the back of your mind thinking that something is off. At least you've got some wiggle room for variance or whatever it is that you want to do.
The mech's armor is thick, and the forward torso and legs are especially well protected. Someone once calculated that if a battalion of Stinger mechs engaged an Atlas, the Atlas would retire for repairs an hour later, leaving only one Stinger still able to move. That kind of reminds me of the old camping joke. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend. I guess that's where the Stinger that can still move comes from. It's the one that ran away immediately. The head is roomy enough to support a small dish antenna, giving the Atlas limited surface-to-space communications. When entering battle, the pilot can fold up the antenna and stow it in a protected portion of the Atlas's head. No wonder it makes such a great scout. I mean, you don't really need anything else, do you? Basically, they'll tell you when scouting is complete and it's time for pickup. And scouting, of course, won't be complete until all enemy units have been obliterated. The 4 medium lasers and the short-range missiles make the mech a good close-range fighter, never mind the AC-20, while its internal structure gives the arms and hands enormous power. This has created many horror stories concerning Atlases and their ability to pick up medium-sized mechs and just fling them around as if they were mere toys. So in case you need some imagery to pound it in, it means picking up a Centurion and using it as a battle club. The main drawback of the Atlas is its slow speed. Intelligent opponents will retreat before the forbidding machine, hoping either to draw it into tight quarters, such as a city or woods, or sucker it into water or mud. Once there, the Atlas's lack of mobility is compounded. If a company depends on an Atlas for fire support, then a wily enemy will hit and run, hoping to draw the swifter mechs away from the slow Atlas. Fortunately, Steiner generals have already thought of this. And I mean, the obvious solution is if there's only Atlases, then there's no drawing away light mechs away from the Atlases now, is there? Battle history. Atlas was first used against Stefan Amaris, that is, Stefan the Usurper, in the final battles for Earth and the major spaceports. The Atlas was instrumental in securing beachheads to allow troops to land safely.
General Kerensky's second-in-command, General de Chevalier, spearheaded the final assault on the usurper's last stronghold, the Imperial City. He continually exposed his atlas to enemy fire, yet marched on as if the laser bolts, missiles, and cannon shells were nothing more than the annoying buzz of flies, or perhaps bees. Tex, I must thank you for the concept of bees in the cockpit. When de Chevalier's atlas pushed over the concrete outer wall surrounding the Imperial Palace, Kerensky headed for the usurper's palace gates in his Orion. Considering the atlas's raw power, it is no wonder that Kerensky wanted all the atlases to come with him to his self-imposed exile. Oddly, more than 2/3 of the pilots who refused to join him were atlas pilots. Perhaps piloting a badass Death's Head makes one imagine they would be successful in an apocalyptic free-for-all. I mean, think about it. If you were piloting an atlas, which would you prefer? Going off into farming some random worlds off Corward hiding somewhere? Or going into the Ragnarok? Well, my guess is that most of the Atlas pilots felt the same way, and they felt they could better their social standing by staying in the inner sphere. The remaining Atlases and those that were still being produced on Hesperus and Quentin continue to inspire terror wherever they tread. Oh yeah. Variants. With the passing years, it has become difficult to replace many Atlas parts, as most supplies have been destroyed or exhausted. The Atlas can use slightly different weapon designs, but they invariably decrease the size of the mech's interior. As for modifications, few successor lords have tried to tamper with success. Some have replaced the medium lasers on the mech's hands with large lasers. This variant is only moderately successful, as the new lasers are unreliable when tied into the already taxed battle computer. In other words, it's perfect as is, at least in 3025. And in 3050, you can begin kicking toad footballs around. Each new generation of Battletech player imagines they want to mess with the art of the Atlas. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, when something is this badass, you want to make it your own. But we're going to focus on the original art here. Let's check out the old TRO. Let's find the Atlas. Look at that, page 122. The Atlas. It's kind of in the back because it's the biggest mech in the original TRO, because the King Crab wasn't out yet. Oh yeah, the Atlas. There's the story page. With 19 tons of armor, LRM-20, autocannon 20, 4 medium lasers, 2 of them are in the back, 2 of them are in the arms, and an SRM-6. Because almost all your weapons are in your torsos, that is your SRM and your autocannon. It means your arms are free to punch when you're at point blank range, or you can kick. Because you're so heavy, you can nearly take a mech's head off with a single punch. And your kicks are kind of like an AC-20 shot. Just remember that if you miss, you have to do a piloting check. So make sure you upgrade your piloting skill on your pilot. Your armor is so thick that you can take multiple AC-20 hits to many locations and still not penetrate your armor. And then, when you consider internal structure, you can still take AC 20 hits to any of your torsos or your legs and not lose the compartment. If you're going up against an Atlas, you want to make sure you have long-range weapons. And hopefully you've got enough armor, like an Awesome, to absorb the LRM-20 bombardment, because once the Atlas runs out of LRMs, it only has range 9 and melee. So you want to peck away at it with long-range autocannons, PPCs, and large lasers, and just keep running backwards away from it as much as you can. And if you're like defending a fixed location against an Atlas, well, sucks to be you. And because they tend to come in 4-packs, when that happens, you just know it's gonna be one of those days. The Atlas does have a natural enemy, and that comes in the form of the Demolisher with its twin AC-20s, and the LRM carrier with its triple LRM-20s. The combination of the two creates the LRM Fortress.
4 Atlases is the Steiner Scout Squad. It defeats the LRM Fortress if it keeps out of range, except to bombard with the Demolishers with its LRMs, and then the LRM carriers in the Fortress run out of ammo. At that point, the Atlases engage the Demolishers.
But there is some viable debate as to whether 4 Atlases actually is the Steiner Scout Squad, because there is an alternative. The true Steiner Scout Squad may actually be an Atlas, a Banshee, and 2 Zeuses. And why do I say such a thing? It sounds almost like heresy. But I say it because this Lance is out on patrol in the 4th Succession War Battle Pack. Therefore, FASA says so. According to FASA, the Steiner Scout Squad is an Atlas, a Banshee, and 2 Zeuses, just like they are in the scenario called The Rise of the Revenant. I mean, makes sense to me. You got yourself your 2 light scouts with the Zeuses, your medium scout with the Banshee, and your heavy scout with the Atlas. It seems fully legit.
And what is the Rise of the Revenant? Well, let's check it out. There it is. A single map. It's a company of Krita against 1 Lance of Steiner. So I've constructed the map roughly according to the rules. So this is the Woodlands map, standard Battletech map. North is that way. The Zeus, the 2 Zeuses must start at 0710 and 0610, and they are looking northeast. The Atlas and the Banshee start pointing north, and the Atlas is in 0908, and the Banshee is in 0809. So at those exact squares. The command lance is made up of 2 Panthers and 2 Jenners. The Kurita player gets to place their units anywhere they want on the map, and the Steiner player must start in those orientations and locations. So I started the command lance here with the 2 Panthers and the 2 Jenners. The support lance, just a quick draw, a Panther and 2 Jenners. I have hiding over there, behind that hill. And then the pursuit lance just here, it's this assassin, a jenner, and 2 spiders I have waiting to jump out from over there. So this, for example, is a configuration for the map. Now, I've played this battle 2 times live before the pandemic started. And each time I played out differently. One time I played as Steiner, and one time I played as Kurita. Now I'm going to have to rotate this a little bit because this lance is hiding so well that it was actually not, one of the mechs was actually not visible. But one of the chambers was completely hidden. So, in the time that I played as Steiner, I believe the map started off in this configuration, and the battle went something like this. Because Steiner loses initiative for the first 2 rounds because this is a ambush of a scouting patrol, I believe I did some simple moves of some kind. I'm not going to fully reconstruct every single move because this was a couple years ago. I don't remember anymore. But effectively, these mechs all jumped out. Everybody jumped and opened fire, essentially, simultaneously from all directions. I remember there being a bunch of mechs actually on this ridge line up here. And they were all firing, focus firing on one of the Zeuses, I believe. And then at that time, I believe as the Steiner player, I was taking out whatever I could, targeting the smaller mechs and taking down a significant number of them. Maybe a panther, and almost not quite 1 per turn per mech. But maybe I took down maybe 2 of these per turn. However, the amount of firepower in the Kurita side is so great that one of the Zeuses did go down. The rules of the game are, as soon as one of the Steiner mechs goes down, the Kurita side is to withdraw as fast as possible, because this is, after all, a hit-and-run mission. However, if you study the battle value, you will see that the Kurita side has a significant advantage. So it's not clear that it's actually even going to be a loss. If the Kurita side had continued to fight to the end, it's possible that the Kurita side might actually have won the battle. Although, if you look at the gunner and pilot scores, they are actually modified. They are not 4 or 5 pilots and gunners. There is a sprinkling of 3 4s and 4 4s and 4 3s, and even some 5 4s on the Kurita side. So it's without correcting for that battle value disadvantage or adjustment, the Kurita side is significantly stronger than the Steiner side, and I believe would win the battle if it was to the death. And also in computer sims, that's what happens. Basically, the Kurita side wins because it just out battle values the Steiner side. But that was not the mission. The mission is a hit and run. So promptly after downing the Zeus, these various mechs ran away. However, I do remember specifically at one point the Atlas chasing a mech down this way. I can't remember which mech it was, but it shooting its rearward lasers at another mech and taking it down. And the Banshee, there was some Jenner or something here maybe, getting into point blank melee range with a Jenner and kicking it, hitting it with a kick, and tearing its left leg and deep into the left torso off with that one single kick.
There was also a situation on the ridge line where the surviving Zeus disabled a mech. And that mech fell down. It was only had one leg left. It was desperately trying to get back up, and it kept falling down, injuring the pilot more and more. And the Zeus slowly crept up on it and finally finished it off. Then, this was maybe only like turn 4 or something. The Kurita mechs successfully escaped from the map. This particular scenario plays out very fast. So then, let's check out the body count. I mean, we did have survivors off both sides, as the Kurita forces mostly escaped, as they should. And it looked something like this. Little more than half the Kurita mechs made it off the map. And, of course, all but one of the Steiner mechs was left standing. I do recall that at the end, this was a very close game, but Steiner squeaked out a slight advantage. The second time I did this scenario, I was Kurita. I massed all my forces together in one giant pile like this, and jumped at the same time, all going in, took down Zeus quickly, and promptly jumped back out. I lost very little and won.